Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes Mr. Carter for Georgia for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much for this hearing. This is something you know that I'm very passionate about, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Administrator, thank you for being here. Just for the record, I am a pharmacist. I have practiced pharmacy over 40 years before I became a member of Congress. I started when I was 10, by the way, but nevertheless, one of the issues that is most important to me is transparency and drug pricing. I was the one behind the counter who had to go and watch the senior citizen make a decision between buying groceries and buying her medicine. I was the one behind the counter who watched a mother in tears as she tried to find the money to pay for her child's antibiotic. And I set as my goal when I got here 8 years ago to do something about that. The first thing I did was to go to the FTC and to ask them to look at the vertical integration that exists within the drug pricing chain, where the insurance company owns the PBM, that owns the pharmacy, that in many cases employs the provider. I asked them to look at that. Finally, after 7.5 years, they undertook a study last summer to look at the impact that the practices of the PBMs are having on independent retail pharmacies. You know, this is a bipartisan issue. This is a nonpartisan issue. I never went to the counter and asked, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The price was always the same. High drug prices impact everyone here in America, all Americans. That's why we have to do something about it. Chair Rogers asked you a question a little while ago, and I want to get clarification and be fair here. I believe she asked you if you had, I don't know whether she was talking about transparency or about the vertical integration. You said you had no authority in that area. Was it about the transparency?
It was about vertical integration.
About the integration. Okay, fair enough. I do believe that is the responsibility of the FTC, and I think the FTC has failed Americans in not undertaking that responsibility, and that's why I applaud them for this study that they're doing right now. And it's not just pharmacy, it's not just drug pricing, it's consolidation within healthcare, period. You know, we had, in this committee, we had the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, before us in a meeting. We had the director and we had 20 staff members. I asked them directly to give me just one example of where consolidation in healthcare has saved money. They could not give me one. One example of where consolidation in healthcare has saved money, and they could not give me one. You know, we all want the same things. Republicans and Democrats want the same thing. We want affordability, accessibility. We want quality in healthcare. That's what we want. And when we talk about accessibility, we have to talk about independent retail pharmacies, because 95% of all Americans live within 5 miles of a pharmacy. Yet 4% of all independent retail pharmacies are going out of business every year as a result of the practices primarily of PBMs. Now, I've got a bill here. You know what spread pricing is, and you understand it. We've got a bill, Drug Pricing Transparency and Medicaid Act. You understand that the state of Ohio, the Attorney General, has just recently undertaken a lawsuit against the PBMs, referring to them as gangsters. And that's exactly what they are. I just want to ask you, do you agree that more transparency is needed when PBMs are now vertically integrated and own the insurance company that owns the PBMs, that owns the pharmacy, that in many cases employs the provider?
I agree that transparency is important. I did want to mention that one thing that we have done, and it really did come from talking with pharmacists, was try to increase the transparency with fees that are paid, and to make sure that pharmacists would understand what the rules were, and it's something that we will continue to work on.
What do you think you can do in helping us with transparency?
I'm happy to, our staff is happy to work with you on ideas around transparency.
Well, we got plenty of them. If we eliminated spread pricing, do you think that we could save money here in America?
I think it's, as with
If I could, there was a study done, and it's a little aged now. It was done a little bit over a year ago by the Berkeley Research Group that showed, and listen, if you remember one thing, to remember this. It showed that only 37% of the price of a drug goes to the pharmaceutical manufacturer, which begs the question, where does the 63% go? It goes to the PBM, it goes to the middleman. That's where the problem is. That's where we can control drug prices at. I want to ask you to please commit that you'll work with us to bring forth more drug transparency. We've got bipartisan legislation that we're working on now.
I commit that we will work with you on.
Thank you, and thank you for being here today, and I yield back.
Thank you.